Welcome to episode 19 of Convergence with Karen Holton, here on People for People Radio. Find out how the personal is political as we explore the politics here on Earth, the exopolitics of our galaxy, and how these intersect with spiritual transformation through my unique perspective. If this is your first time joining us, I encourage you to check out the archives here on People for People Radio or my YouTube channel to find all of the episodes of Convergence, and you will be glad that you did. Today in episode 19, I am very pleased to introduce you to my friend Preston Dennett, and today we're going to hear about his latest book called Wondrous. The extraterrestrials have arrived. Wondrous contains 25 all-new original cases of people who have had extensive UFO encounters. Published here for the first time, these true first-hand accounts cover the gamut of the UFO phenomenon: sightings, USOs, landings, face-to-face meetings with ETs, onboard UFO encounters, and whistleblower stories revealing shocking secrets the government doesn't want you to know. Preston Dennett takes you on a fascinating journey deep into the heart of the unknown. These 25 startling and wondrous UFO encounters will change the way you view UFOs and these strange visitors to our planet. These 25 incredible accounts represent the cutting edge of UFO research and answer many of the mysteries surrounding the UFO phenomenon. Greys, praying mantis ETs, human-looking ETs, strange humanoids, they're all here. High strangeness is a regular feature of UFO encounters, and these cases do not disappoint. Here's a little background information about Preston Dennett. Preston began investigating UFOs and the paranormal in 1986 when he discovered that his family, friends, and co-workers were having dramatic, unexplained encounters. Since then, he has interviewed hundreds of witnesses and investigated a wide variety of paranormal phenomenon. Preston is a field investigator for the Mutual UFO Network, also known as MUFON. He's also a ghost hunter, a paranormal researcher, and the author of 28 books and more than 100 articles on UFOs and the paranormal. Several of his books have been Amazon UFO bestsellers. His articles have appeared in numerous magazines, including Fate, Atlantis Rising, MUFON UFO Journal, Nexus, Paranormal Magazine, UFO Magazine, Phenomena Magazine, Mysteries Magazine, Ufologist, and others. His writing has been translated into several different languages, including German, French, Portuguese, Russian, and Icelandic. He has appeared on numerous radio and television programs, including Midnight in the Desert with Art Bell, Coast to Coast, and also the History Channel's Deep Sea UFOs and UFO Hunters. His research has been presented in the LA Times, the LA Daily News, the Dallas Morning News, and other newspapers. He has taught classes on various paranormal subjects and lectures across the United States. Preston currently resides in Southern California, and you can check out his website at www.prestondennett.weebly.com. Hi, Preston. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hi, Karen. I'm doing great. Doing really well. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good too. I'm doing good too. I thought that we could start off. We want to talk about your new book called Wondrous, but let's cover a couple of basic topics before we get into the content, because these are things that the viewers often want to know. So let's start with, why are the ETs here?
That's the million-dollar question. They do seem to be interested in all things human, all things Earth. I suspect that there are a lot of ETs out there. I know
Mm-hmm.
we feel like we're alone in this universe, but we're not. There's a lot of stars out there. It's pretty obvious we're not alone. I think most scientists even will agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're ETs seem to be very, very interested in us as human beings, in our planet. They're taking, I mean, there are literally hundreds of thousands of recorded sightings. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and as far as like onboard experiences, I think that's far more common than people realize. Probably close to 1 in 40, 1 in 50 people. And that's not a guess. This is a direct quote from J. Allen Hynek of Project Blue Book,
Mm-hmm.
and also the Roper organization, a survey organization, did tackle the UFO subject and trying to find out how common abductions are, and they found 1 in 50.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the ETs are here in large numbers for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think that they're hostile or benevolent or a mixture? What's your take on it? Because you've interviewed so many people through MUFON, you must have a pretty good take on that.
Yeah, I think I'm very encouraged. I think that they are people like us, probably less hostile than humans. Um, Seriously, their
Yeah.
behavior does fall under pretty much the same umbrella as human behavior. I mean, there are good, there are bad, but generally speaking, I'm going to say they're pretty darn good. I
Mm-hmm.
would say, people are, you know, taken on board and they feel as if this is being done against their will, right?
Mm-hmm.
People feel like they are being kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
This is, not uncommon. Uh, this whole abduction phenomenon. I'm not sure that's the best word for it. When I first got involved in this field, I was not happy. I'm like, well, I'm not so sure this is good news for us.
Mm-hmm.
But I've changed my mind. I've really looked at this objectively. I've interviewed hundreds upon hundreds of people who've had onboard UFO encounters. And,
Mm-hmm.
and the very worst I hear is, the physical examination can be traumatic and occasionally, but actually pretty rarely, painful.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the worst I hear. People, can be very scared. And if you have a strong fear response, they will wipe your memory, and sort of all you're left with is snippets of this traumatic exam. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why people have gotten somewhat of a negative impression sometimes of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the whole phenomena in totality, what happens when someone's taken on board? They're physically examined. That's the most common, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But what's happening? What is this physical exam? So I looked into that and I found, get this, more than 300 documented cases of people who have been healed, physically healed. Honest to
Mm-hmm.
God, yeah, everything from, I mean, you name it, colds to cancer. 30 cases of people cured of cancer, but literally across the board of minor illnesses like stomach aches or backaches or
Mm-hmm.
cuts or broken bones or just about everything you can imagine. Really, all the way up to serious illnesses like diphtheria, tuberculosis, diabetes, hepatitis, liver disease, kidney stones, tumors of all kinds disappearing. So
Mm-hmm.
this so I think this speaks towards the ET agenda. And, are they benevolent? Well, they're healing an awful lot of people. I've come to the conclusion that healing is absolutely one of their primary agendas.
Mm-hmm.
And so if someone doesn't have a strong fear response, uh, they often remember what's happening, and it is really very encouraging because they are given free reign of the craft. They are quite often taken to the engine room. This is not uncommon. I know this may sound weird to a skeptic, but this is absolutely something I hear consistently.
Mm-hmm.
They will take you to the engine room and tell you how the craft works. It's almost always some version of, like, I guess, uh, anti-gravity engines or electromagnetism, and using the magnetic field of our planet and other planets to propel their craft.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not using fossil fuels. People are often taken to the helm, the control room, sat down in the chair and told how to fly the craft, or actually allowed to fly the craft. Seriously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Another thing, they're given messages. And these are also often like, why are you messing around with nuclear power? Do you not understand the dangers of this?
Mm-hmm.
Or you must stop putting out the greed and negativity that you're putting out. You are on the pathway to self-destruction, which is what happened to us, and we don't want that to happen to you.
Yes, yes. That was going to be my next question, but I've got just one more point I want to ask you about, people's different experiences when they are, for lack of a better word, abducted, taken. I usually use the word taken. Um, and that is, I think I've heard you mention before in other conversations that, although sometimes ET may not have the best bedside manner, of course they're a whole different species or whatever they are, and also they would have different cultural ways of being social, so that kind of makes sense to me. But you I believe said before that you never saw, or I should say you never heard through any of your interviews about people being deliberately hurt or tortured or freaked out beyond what they could handle, as soon as they realize that the human is really freaked out. They can often soothe them, or, like you said, erase the memory. So even, I think, compared to the way humans are, some are kind, some are cruel. It seems to me that although the ET doctors, or whatever you want to call them, may not have the best bedside manner, they're not actually cruel. Have you ever heard of them being cruel?
Um, Not in my own investigations. I mean, there are a few cases which are unpleasant and traumatic and not nice. I mean, I'm not going to lie.
Mm-hmm.
Not every single ET is going to be our friend. It's a very large universe. But
Mm-hmm.
in my own research, and I think this is borne out by the research of others, especially the ones who are really, have dug deep, like Barbara Lamb is a good example. She's done hundreds upon hundreds of regressions. And
Yes.
she's saying the same exact thing that I found out. No, there is no evidence of sadism, no evidence of torture. They're not deliberately hurting people.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, Sometimes they do come across as unemotional, because in some cases they have bred out their emotions to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them. I think there's just a portion of them that are dealing with this, and I've heard this from many, independent, separate witnesses. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Say that the Greys have, genetically manipulated themselves to do space travel, or have suffered genetic damage due to conflicts, various reasons, but they have lost some of their emotions, their ability to reproduce, and this is why they're coming and collecting people and getting genetic material.
Mm-hmm.
This is why they're very interested in our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few cases where people are, afraid or screaming. They're like, "Why are you screaming? Why are you afraid?" This is an important point. The single most common phrase that people report, the most common message, is, "Do not be afraid. We won't
Mm-hmm.
hurt you."
Mm-hmm.
This is the first words out of their mind, I'll say, because they're generally telepathic.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they, yeah, it's not they're not trying to scare people. No, no, no. double no, triple no.
Mm-hmm.
They are people like us. They are perhaps our ancestors. We're related to them. I think they probably look upon us as their children in a way.
Mm-hmm.
They are trying to guide us. They're trying to awaken us spiritually. This
Mm-hmm.
is absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at people who are having extensive encounters, people who have been taken on board, they are the nicest, most psychic people you will ever meet. They do
Mm-hmm.
channeling. Yeah, they do channeling, psychic readings. They're good at mediumship, clairvoyance. They have precognition. They do astral travel. Oh, healing. They're all about healing. Environmentalism, saving the animals. Most contactees have this incredible connection to the animal kingdom and are very, very concerned about our planet. So this is why I'm very encouraged about these visitors to our planet. They are people like us, but less hostile, less
Yeah.
violent.
Yeah. That's been my experience too. So then maybe we could just go into a little bit about what is their agenda on, for this planet. Now you sort of touched on it, but is there more?
Yeah, they have multiple agendas. One primary agenda is healing people.
Mm-hmm.
Another is reinvigorating the genetics of their race.
Mm-hmm.
That is another is to stop us from blowing our planet up with nuclear power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is a big, big thing for them. And you can see evidence of this in the fact that they have hovered over uh, nuclear uh, power stations.
Mm-hmm.
If you just start searching for that, you'll be shocked to see how many nuclear power stations have had encounters, how many nuclear submarines, nuclear ships. I've got my own cases of this. A really good example is the Malmstrom incident in Montana in 1964, 7, I believe it was. Yeah, one of the cases in my latest book, Wondrous, I talked to a first-hand witness who's
Mm-hmm.
coming forward about Malmstrom. He was there when ETs showed up and shut the missiles down. So this is one of their major agendas, is warning us about our foolish use of nuclear weapons and energy, because we are causing all kinds of damage when we, explode nuclear bombs for testing. It's,
Mm-hmm.
it's causing way more damage. That's an agenda. Another is waking us up to our own psychic abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Another is warning us of our warlike ways. Oh, that comes up again and again and again. And this
Mm-hmm.
is probably the single greatest factor of why we haven't had open official contact. Is because,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's our prejudices, it's our violent tendencies, it's our, you know, shoot first, ask
Yeah.
questions later
Yeah. Yeah.
mentality.
Yeah. And I think with nuclear weapons, what happens is even if they're just testing them, there is an interplay between the different dimensional realities. So we could be affecting other worlds. Would you agree with that as well, Preston?
Yeah, it's not a could be, it's an is. This is what people have been told, that
Mm-hmm.
when we explode nuclear bombs, we are sending shock waves. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
one gentleman I interviewed, uh, Kevin Kamen, he is a Navy medic. Uh, his story is told in my book, Inside UFOs. He was on board a Navy ship when he was taken on board a craft, saw very, very tall praying mantis ETs, who told him flat out that when we started exploding nuclear bombs, we started a countdown clock on our planet. And they showed him in full living color future events that would happen on our planet because of our messing around with nuclear power. They showed him hurricanes, tornadoes,
Mm.
earthquakes, landslides, uh, lots of hurricanes.
We're
They said
seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of that. Mm-hmm.
exactly. So yeah, when we explode nuclear bombs, it not only affects our planet, it bleeds out into, we're ripping a hole in space-time.
Mm-hmm.
and it's affecting other dimensions and other beings in far-reaching areas that we're not even aware of. So
Mm-hmm.
it's no coincidence that 1947, the atomic age, coincides precisely with the modern age of UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
UFOs have been around forever. We know this. I mean, thousands of years. There's petroglyphs, there's hieroglyphs, there's
Yeah.
rock paintings, there's native, indigenous cultures have long oral traditions about the sky gods, the sky people. We know they've been around forever, but since 1947, the numbers, oh my God, are unprecedented. They are here in very large numbers, starting in 1947. I think
Mm-hmm.
because, of what the stupidity of some of these people on our planet, the warmongers,
Mm-hmm.
they know who they are. They're on my naughty list. The people who are promoting greed, the people who are promoting divisiveness, the polluters, some of, don't get me started.
Well, I'm actually really glad they're interested in us, and I would. And why don't you start to tell us some of the different experiences that are highlighted in your book? I was interested in the one about the school teacher who encounters a 15-foot tall mantis alien during her morning jog. Wow, that must have been a big shock for her, eh?
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite cases. So gave it the first chapter. What a story! She contacted me because she heard actually Kevin Cannon's story, who I mentioned, who he was taken on board and finally turned around to look at these ETs. He was very scared at first, and he turned around and looks at them. They're 15-foot tall praying mantis.
Wow.
And I'm like, "Are you sure, Kevin?" And he's like, "Listen, one stood right next to me. It was more than twice my height. It was taller than a basketball hoop. He's a trained observer, he knows what he's talking about."
Mm-hmm.
So this school teacher read that and she had to contact me. It's an amazing story. It's 2006. This school teacher, what a neat lady, very intelligent, gave a very lucid interview.
Mm-hmm.
She likes to go jogging each morning, very, very early, 5 a.m. when it's dark and nobody's out, just the fox and the deer and raccoons and stuff. So she goes out of her home in O'Fallon, Illinois. She lived in a pretty rural area,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just jogging down the street like she always does. A couple of streets away from her house, she goes pretty far. She comes upon this T intersection, and up to a fairly busy street during the daytime, but no one's there at night, not at this hour.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly her dog, who comes with her, pricks up his ears and looks ahead. And that caught her attention. She likes to see the wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
She's expecting it to be, a raccoon or something. And instead, she sees what looks like a man on stilts walking down the center of the road.
Wow.
And she's looking at him thinking, what the heck? Why would a man on stilts be walking down the road in the middle, of the early morning hours?
Mm-hmm.
And this guy walks under the streetlight, directly under the streetlight, and that's when she gets a good view. And you know what? It's not a man. It is well, she thought grasshopper at first, but then quickly realized, no, this looks more like a praying mantis.
Mm-hmm.
And she says it came right under the streetlight, so she could estimate its height. Afterwards, she went up to the streetlight. She says it was 15 feet tall, 15
Mm-hmm.
feet. And it was moving quite quickly, taking 10-foot strides. It was gray in color, gray mottled,
Mm-hmm.
uh, not completely uniform. It had very, very long stick-like legs. Its arms were quite a bit shorter, sort of held tightly against its body. And its head was bent forward and down, and it was scanning the road back and forth as if it had dropped its cell phone or something.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, just moving very quickly down the center of the road and did not appear to notice her. And God bless her, she watches it walk by and doesn't run home like I think most people would have.
Yeah.
She runs forward and chases this thing down the road with her dog. It's
Wow.
amazing. So she reaches the T intersection, and follows it down the road for just a few minutes because it's moving pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
And not even, I don't think it was a full minute even. Uh, but very quickly kind of turns off the road and goes into this cornfield, and she loses sight of it. So that was it in a nutshell. I asked her,
Wow.
you know, why? I mean, why do you think it was there? She says, I have no idea. I wasn't carrying anything. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
is there anything in this area that might attract it? What is unique about this area where you live?
Mm-hmm.
She says, I don't know. It's a pretty rural area, cornfields, it's a farming area. There's a school nearby. And she says, there is one thing. Scott Air Force Base is about 6 miles away as the crow flies.
Mm-hmm.
And that made my ears prick up because Air Force bases are UFO magnets. They really are.
Mm-hmm.
And Scott Air Force Base has had UFO encounters. And I did a little more research and found out that at the time of this incident was also kind of curious because this was shortly after a very famous UFO incident that occurred not too far away from where she
Mm-hmm.
was. You may have heard of it. It's the Chicago O'Hare Airport UFO encounter, where a UFO hovered over the control tower and was seen by pilots, was seen by baggage handlers, was seen by visitors at the airport, was seen by
Oh,
people.
by numerous people.
Yep, photographed. I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Airport officials tried to cover it up. They lied. They issued contradictory statements. They told people not to talk about it. But a mainstream news journalist got a hold of the story and busted it wide open.
Oh,
And
that's
that
awesome.
that's the yeah, that's the only reason we know about it. But perhaps it's tied to that. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
here's another thing that I found out recently. I called her right before the book came out. I'm like, "Do you have anything to add? Any new encounters?" Blah blah blah. And she said, "Oh yeah, I found something out."
Mm.
Turns out there was another encounter with a praying mantis in this general area involving a gentleman who was on the road, not the same road, but nearby.
Mm-hmm.
Not the same city, but uh, I forget how far away, some 40 miles or something like that. But at any rate, he saw a praying mantis crossing the road. But in this case, this is so strange. It was not walking upright, it was walking on all fours. A very large, I don't know how tall it was, I mean, he couldn't tell. But,
Mm-hmm.
but walking on all fours across the road.
Now, do they usually walk on two legs and have two like arms, kind of like us, or do they have four legs and two arms? How do they generally manifest?
I have not heard of them having four legs, except for perhaps in that case, that's perhaps one of them. But
Mm-hmm.
generally just, yeah, two very long legs, and their arms are, like praying mantis arms, kind of hooked with little claw-like hands and sort of like a dog's begging, in front of,
Yeah.
hooked in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
They move with
And
very,
so, and so this gentleman saw one actually walking on its arms and its legs, sort of.
yeah, or maybe it did have four legs, because I believe
Mm-hmm.
some of the praying mantis we have, you know, um, do have four legs.
Mm-hmm. I'm not real familiar with them, but yeah, I was just curious, on, how many legs they generally walked on.
Yeah. So I continued interviewing this lady
Mm-hmm.
because I was curious. I'm like, because when someone has an alien encounter like that, it's usually not a one-off. There's usually a history of encounters. And
Mm-hmm.
she's like, well, actually, I'm like, oh, here we go. She says,
Mm-hmm.
well, when I was a little girl, I had figures entering into my bedroom. I'm like, oh, okay. And she's like, yeah, I didn't know what they were. It was very scary. They were short little things. I couldn't get a good view. It was quite dark. It scared me pretty bad. I'd scream for my parents, and they'd come running in, and nothing would be there.
Mm-hmm.
Happened repeatedly. In fact, so often that her parents forbade her from waking them up in the middle of the night anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So poor thing had to deal with this by herself.
Oh
Uh,
dear.
and she wakes up one time and she's not in her room. She's on a table. And there's bright lights. She's in a weird room. There's short figures around her. She can see medical instruments. She's pretty sure that she's about to be operated on. She's like, oh my God, they're going to fix me. They're going to do something. And
Mm-hmm.
so that concerned her. And yeah, she had some trouble dealing with that. But it turns out, yeah, she does have a history of encounters and would later see strange humanoids at least twice in public
Mm-hmm.
places. Yeah, very interesting case.
Preston, do people ever report on seeing different kinds of ET, like for instance, greys with mantis, or greys with reptilians, or reptilians with mantis, or is it generally just kind of one type per experience?
It's across the board.
Mm-hmm.
So generally, I mean, most often, I should say, what I hear is grays, pretty much the same grays. But what you will often hear, often enough, is short little grays, 3 foot. And they pull you on board, and then once you're on board, there's taller grays who seem to be
Mm-hmm.
bossing around the shorter grays or mid-side grays. So you have
Mm-hmm.
these 3 foot tall, almost android-like beings, and these could be the ones that are described as not so emotional and perhaps not super reactive to
Mm-hmm.
someone's fear, because they're not emotional beings. They're not soulful beings. They are, in effect, I don't want to say complete robots, but like biological androids that
Mm-hmm.
have the job of taking someone and pulling them into the craft where they are then met and greeted by the mid-sized grays, usually 5 foot tall. But sometimes you do see grays and praying mantis together. I personally don't have a whole lot of cases like that, but I know of many.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and also grays and human lookings. I have several cases of that,
Mm-hmm.
which is not unusual. So it does appear that they are working together in many cases. Uh, when I hear about cases of all three being together,
Mm-hmm.
it does seem like the praying mantis are often like the watchers, the recorders, the most intelligent perhaps, or you know, I'm not sure I would call it a hierarchy because they all seem to really cooperate together.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of government and things like that, it's not like us at all. They don't have need of government.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they, I mean, when you're all super telepathic and everyone knows what everyone else is doing, and
Yeah.
you can't lie. I mean, lying is not a thing.
Well, we would hope they'd move past that too by the time they're into interdimensional travel and, and such. But did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Because I wanted to ask you about another experience in your book.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Um, well, apparently in your book, I'm sorry, I haven't actually read it yet. It just came out. But when weird alien symbols appeared on a woman's body, and also a therapist begins a journey that leads her to a shocking discovery. Can you tell us more about that? That looked so interesting.
Ah, yes, this is the case of Linda. Such a neat lady. I met her at a MUFON meeting in Burbank, the Mutual
Mm-hmm.
UFO Network, and I could just tell she had a story. She had this psychic aura about her. She's very powerful, really interesting lady, and we got to chatting, and yeah, she had a story to tell. Oh, it's amazing. She's very psychic, and you know, was seeing a therapist due to some childhood abuse issues, which I just want to stress I don't think is related to UFO contact. Child
Mm-hmm.
abuse, child abuse is an unfortunate fact of life, and it's pretty common, unfortunately. So,
Mm-hmm.
so at any rate, she's dealing with that, and very successfully became a therapist herself because she just had such wonderful success with therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And her therapist says, what you might try, what might be helpful for you is to go to massage therapy because this can release hidden trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And so she agreed and was going to massage therapy and did start having some real, breakthroughs in this way. But came back from, she was doing this somewhat regularly for a little while and started to notice something very strange happening. She
Mm-hmm.
looks down on her body and sees this weird symbol. And her first thought was like, "Gosh, could I have scratched myself?" Because she has a condition known as dermographia. This is where your skin can welt up if you scratch it.
Mm-hmm.
So she would, could welt up pretty easily. But she's looking down at this scratch on her, and it's just like not a letter. It's not a hieroglyphic. It's a weird symbol of some kind. She's like, "Wow, that's odd." It was clearly of intelligent design.
Mm-hmm.
So when it happened again, she's like, "Huh," and she started to write it down. And one time she goes in the shower, she's cleaning herself off, and looks down on her leg, and there's a series of these symbols going up her leg, and that freaked her out because this is like clearly a message of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
So she copies them down, and she's got her, got a number of these in her little notebook. And as she's copying these messages down in her notebook, she's also compelled to do little drawings, which she doesn't really understand what they're of. They're like weird medical instruments or something, and like plane-like objects without wings, so almost UFO looking, but she doesn't really connect that to UFOs at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So she's just drawing all these weird symbols and these weird shapes and medical instruments uh, and doesn't know what to make of it. So she goes to the library and checks out some books on symbols, thinking, all right, let's look this up. And goes through all these symbols, and Freemasons and Egyptian hieroglyphics and all the different languages, Sanskrit and so on, and can't find a match. She just can't.
Mm-hmm.
So she shows her friends. She goes to experts in symbology. She went to a Messianic temple. Maybe they could help. No, just could not find an answer. And at some point they stopped appearing. She kind of put the notebook away and thought, well, I'm never going to figure this out. Until something amazing happened. Late 1980s, I think it was. Let me think about this. I'd have to look up the exact date. It's in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Early 1990s. She's watching TV with her boyfriend. She's on the couch, and they're like, "Oh, here's an interesting show called Intruders." Intruders was based on Bud Hopkins' research. Bud Hopkins is, a UFO onboard experience investigator,
Mm-hmm.
and had written a book called Intruders. So this miniseries, a television miniseries, is based on his book Intruders, about people who've had contact. I've read the book. I watched the miniseries. It was actually pretty good. What I liked about it is it's really one of the very few media projects, movies, that is actually accurate. Actually portrays this phenomena accurately without hype. Like Fire in the Sky. What a
Mm-hmm.
great movie. It was a great movie, except the onboard segment was complete fiction.
And it scared the hell out of me too. That show put me right off watching movies about experiences with ET.
Yeah, it set UFO research back like 5 years.
Yeah.
Not kidding. I can't tell you how many people called me up and like, "Oh, is that what happened?" I'm like, "No, no, no, no." So
Yeah.
so the Intruders movie was great in
Good.
that regard, and so she's watching it, not thinking anything, and then it gets to the onboard segment with Ben Vereen, and there's another famous actress that was taken on board in that movie, and boom, there's these alien symbols portrayed in the movie that are shown on the wall of the craft. And these were actual alien symbols, which Bud Hopkins, insisted, be accurate and
Mm-hmm.
portrayed. They were portrayed in the movie accurately. And she
Mm-hmm.
sees these symbols. Linda sees these symbols, Her eyes go wide, her hair stands up, she gets a chill down her spine, her mouth drops open, and her boyfriend, who's sitting next to her, goes, "Hey, look at that, Linda. Aren't those the same symbols you drew?"
Wow.
So they both
Wow.
right? They both recognize it instantly, and she's like, "Oh my God, yes, yes, those are them. Those are them. Oh my God." So
Oh,
that
wow.
that came her answer, and that was what I call a cue. People
Mm-hmm.
who have repressed memories
Mm-hmm.
will often have a cue. One guy I talked to was walking into a bookstore, saw the book Unidentified Flying Objects by Edward J. Ruppelt, saw the
Mm-hmm.
word UFO, and boom, remembered that he had seen a UFO at a drive-in movie.
Mm-hmm.
An incredible encounter.
It's such a fascinating subject. Um, how I really relate to it from my own experience is that, when I was having my contact experiences, I don't feel like I was abducted. For me, I would say it's contact because I was definitely in agreement with it. But when that was happening to me, I kind of thought that maybe I was imagining it. Maybe it wasn't real. Maybe it wasn't true. Maybe it was all in my own little head. But then as I started getting confirmation and also within my own research and my own investigation into this subject, I also experienced triggers which released memory. And when I realized that it was real, absolutely real, it kind of freaked me out for a while till I got used to the idea, to be quite honest with you. Yes, well, like Preston mentioned, Vanessa, something like 1 in 40 or 1 in 50 people on this planet have had um, contact experiences, but most don't remember it. I didn't remember, well, I would have some memories because I had my experiences at night, but I wasn't sure if I was dreaming or if I was imagining it. Like, I wasn't really sure because I'd never had experiences like that before. But, oh dear, looks like Preston might not be coming back. If Preston doesn't come back, I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll reschedule him in for another show, and we'll catch up on where we left off. I want to encourage you to go to Preston's website, and I'll just state it again here. It's www.prestondennett.weebly.com, and I'm going to spell it for you for those of you who are not familiar with Preston, so that you can find his 28 fascinating books. So you can get a hold of Preston from www.prestennett.weebly, which is WEEBLY.com. And check out some of his books. They're absolutely fascinating. Because Preston has been an investigator for MUFON, he's interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people, maybe thousands, I'm not sure, and he's heard a lot of different experiences. And so he just puts together the most amazing material. I was going to ask him about some other features within his book. I'll just give you a couple of the top topics that are covered. And his book, by the way, is called Wondrous by Preston Dennett. So when we got cut off from Preston, we were talking about weird alien symbols that appeared on the woman's body. She then saw a show that was fairly accurate and saw the same symbols. And then she had, I think, spontaneous release of memory. And also it certainly validated where those symbols had come from and that her contact experiences were very real. The book also goes on to talk about a woman's encounter with friendly grays, which led to her spiritual awakening. And also she received some dire warnings for all of humankind. And another experience featured in his book is a young couple expecting their first child discover that extraterrestrials have taken their baby. Wow. I can't imagine what that would be like. Other subjects within that book are a young child is greeted by a UFO with a telepathic message that's meant only for her. A married couple flying in a commercial jet are shocked to see a silver disc flying right outside of their window. And I was going to get Preston to talk a bit more about 3 teenagers who were accosted by a UFO, which sent down a beam of light that was trying to abduct them. Wow, I'd like to hear more about that. Also, a group of teenagers that come upon a landed saucer and humanoids, which were not happy to see the teenagers. Another experience from the book is 3 people see a UFO rise from the ocean, and it hovers over a factory of a bunch of factory smokestacks that were right near their home. And there's so many other things that you will just love to read about in Preston's books. It's 25 true accounts of actual ET experiences. And like I said in the beginning, these experiences, these 25 incredible accounts represent the cutting edge of UFO research and answer many of the mysteries surrounding the UFO phenomenon. And it features grays, praying mantis ETs, human-looking ETs, strange humanoids, all kinds of different kinds of extraterrestrial beings. And Preston also says that high strangeness is a regular feature of UFO encounters. And so I'm sure you're all looking forward to reading his wonderful book. And as I mentioned earlier, I will have Preston back on so that we can continue this conversation in the next couple of weeks. And I know you'd just love to hear more about what he has to offer. So we may as well just continue on with a reminder. For those of you who have been following my show Convergence, you will know that I covered the Quantum Health Transformation online course. I believe it was episodes 8 through 15. So check out the archives to learn more about that amazing program. And you can find that and other inspiring information, which is absolutely free, on my website. And if you would like to support my work, you might want to take a look at my shop. I have some beautiful Zendome organites. I have some crystals. I have some services, and I have some PDF downloads, which are printable, shareable copies of my material. If you want to help create the change you wish to see in the world, take exquisite care of the temple body, raise your vibrational frequency, and learn from the Quantum Health Transformation Program. Let me know if you have any questions about our discussion today, and I'll do my best to answer them next time Preston is on my show. You can email me with any questions at forbiddentransformation@gmail.com. Join me and bring your friends as we go live at 1 p.m. Mountain Time every Tuesday here on People for People Radio. And a special thank you to Gaz and Vanessa for hosting me and moderating for me here on People for People Radio. And much love and light to you, the viewers. Thank you for sharing this time with me. If you would like to enjoy more of my content, check out my website at www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. That's KarenHolton healthcoach.com, where you will find, as I mentioned, an abundance of free resources to assist with energetic ascension into physical, mental, and spiritual paradise. And on my website, you'll also find, as I mentioned, the 9 steps to quantum health transformation. It's absolutely free. There's no strings attached, and there's never been a better time to do this kind of work. It involves everything you need to expand your mind and your thinking, to help you to detoxify mentally, physically and emotionally. And it also will help you to learn some amazing techniques for raising your frequency so that you can better fit into what we call the new positive timeline. I want to give a great big thank you to Preston Dennett. Preston, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sorry we had connection issues. This is a connectivity issues. Today, I'm not surprised. We have at least two, I don't think they're massive, but pretty big CMEs, coronal mass ejections today, which were actually due to hit us in North America between noon and 2 p.m. And that might be what caused the problem. But Preston, thank you so much for joining us. I'll be in contact and we'll have you back really soon so that we can finish the program. It was just absolutely delightful to hear about your new book. So check out Preston Dennett's new book called Wondrous, and you'll hear the very latest 25 amazing ET experiences. If you would like to support my work, check out my online shop where you will find, as I mentioned, Zendome's Orgonite. Now, this is my unique brand of orgone generators. They're ethically sourced, they're handmade, and they're double charged for maximum effect. So they're never made in a sweatshop or by slave labor, and they're not made in a factory. They're all handmade by a personal friend of mine. This was really important for the energy of each orgone generator to have a nice kind of clean, positive effect right from the get-go. And I think it's important too that we support artisans and local creators and people who are not affiliated with big business to help them, especially in these trying times. And you will also find in my online shop, as I mentioned, comfort crystals. I don't have a lot of them, but they're all, I've energetically infused all of them. And they're just beautiful semi-precious stones. So you might want to take a look at what I have left over. And again, the lifestyle services and the PDF downloads. So just to recap, my website is www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com. You can email me at forbiddentransformation@gmail.com. And you can catch my live shows every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Mountain Time here on People for People Radio, www.peopleforpeople.ning.com. You may also catch the replay on my YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/C/Karen Holton TV. And for my uncensored content, you might want to check me out on Odyssey, spelled Odyssee, www.odyssey.com/@Karen Holton TV. Much love and light, and we'll see you next week.